Hello, this is PubShorts, episode 25. Play the game, publish or perish. My name is Dr. KK, and I'm the Innovation Officer at Trinka and Inago. And I have with me Tony O'Rourke. Tony, hi.
Oh, you picked another great song, KK. Play the game. Great song for a great band.
All right,
Brilliant.
all right. So, Tony, is it appropriate in your books to wish people a happy New Year on the 13th of January?
It's never too late to wish that somebody a happy new year. But let me be the first to wish them a happy 2026.
All right. All right, Tony. So maybe you can introduce yourself and what
Yes,
PubShorts and Trinka and Inago are.
yeah. So Pub Shots is a regular podcast that KK and I record every well, a couple of times a week now, isn't it? I think this is episode 25,
Yeah.
where we talk about issues relating to publishing and to the scholarly communication world, as particularly around the use of technology, AI, and its widespread uses across the sector. I'm Tony O'Rourke, and I'm Vice President for Partnerships here at Inago, and I look after the some of the commercialization of our AI-based products,
Mhm.
such as Trinker Inago reports to the global academic community.
Right. So, Tony, why do we have the episode name as "Play the Game"? The reference to the Queen song from the album Game, right? Why
Yeah.
why are we talking about it?
Well, I think we'll see shortly. There's an interesting game that's been developed, which I think we'd be interested to share with our viewers.
Yeah. Okay. So, this episode we have tried to theme it around research integrity, and that's why the title is such. And so let's start, Tony, with the
I, I,
first.
I will say one thing.
Uh
I
huh.
will say one thing before we start, and that is, yes, although this is quite a light-hearted title, research integrity is such an important issue. I mean, I know we've talked about this in almost every podcast we've done. I cannot stress how the whole community that we're serving
Hmm.
is supported by research integrity process. Without the research integrity process, we wouldn't have the effective scholarly communication sector that we have now.
Right. And that is a perfect segue to our first story or the article. It is from one of these leaders, one of our leaders in the field of publishing technology, research integrity,
Yeah.
by Ian Mulvaney. So, do you have any personal anecdotes about Ian?
I don't know Ian personally. I've met Ian at a couple of conferences.
Right.
He is the memory head of technology for the British Medical Journal, BMJ,
Right.
and is an advocate.
Right.
And I think, yeah, and a skeptical advocate. So he's been an advocate about the use
Right.
of AI. But I think he's encouraging technology as you would expect in his role
Yes.
within publishing workflows.
So I think this is his newsletter slash blog, and the article is titled. It's about a month old now. So, do we need a trust credit agency in scholarly publishing? So, I'll just summarize some of the key points here. So, Ian discusses scholarly publishing issues and highlights the need for identity verification in terms of research integrity. And so, he refers to this white paper, which I think Tony, you and I have probably talked about it already.
Yes,
It
we
is
have.
it is relate. I mean, it is published by the STM Association
Yeah.
in October of last year. It is titled Trusted Identity in Academic Publishing. So, Ian suggests, I'm going back to the article, Ian suggests, because of the rising issues with research integrity, a know your customer protocol. I mean, he doesn't suggest it, he talks about it for researchers. He believes a credit scoring system could improve trust. And the report raises questions, as in this, his article as well as the STM Association white paper raises questions about inclusivity and privacy, which is a factor, right? As in, whenever you're extracting more information from individuals, you have the risk of privacy. So, so far, what are your thoughts? As in, is there a credit sort of a credit system and a credit agency? Would that partially fix some of the problems in research?
Okay, so I think the question is: do the current processes that are in place today work? Are they effective in ensuring integrity by honest
Hmm.
approaches by researchers? I think the answer is they're good. They're very good in some cases, but they're not doing enough.
Hmm.
I think Ian's come up with an interesting idea in terms of how the industry might broadly define ways of ensuring that the author is who the author is.
Right.
I mean, the question is again, it's around the business model. Is who pays?
Right.
Who's going to ultimately fund this?
So, Tony, before I proceed with my point, how many scholarly associations are you a part of?
Me
Approximately.
personally,
Yes.
gosh, I'm part of at least the three global ones.
Mm.
STM, we're members of STM, or at least part of our organisation is
Right.
the ALPSP, the Association of Learned Professional Scholarly Publishers, SSP, which is a Society for Scholarly Publishers,
Hmm.
because it is a global sector. But there are more. There are also other smaller specialist societies in editing and others which I'm not directly part of, but colleagues are.
Right. So the reason why I asked you this question is that Ian sees potential in using society memberships as trust markers, and he
Yeah,
encourages experimentation and collaboration
yeah.
among publishers. So my question to you, Tony, scholarly membership as markers could mean decreasing inclusivity, as such memberships are potentially priced higher than, let's say, for example, it is very expensive for me to pay for a membership, and I'm expecting a lot of researchers to have this a similar problem. So what are your
Oh, well,
thoughts on that?
to be fair to Ian, I don't think he necessarily talks about business models and pricing. What he talks about is how
Hmm.
one can use a society membership to leverage this kind of information. I
Hmm.
mean, there are plenty of societies who will have preferential terms for members in low income or middle income countries.
Right.
Some societies who will have no fees at all for members in certain countries to encourage diversity, inclusivity, etc.
Right.
So I think the principle is interesting.
Mhm.
How it works in practice would need to be worked through in terms of how it's funded, how it's supported.
Right. So, as always, we recommend that you refer to Ian's article as well as his white paper, because it is a very
Yeah,
good resource to build your knowledge on
yeah.
research.
I'm happy to say that anything that comes out of STM
Mm,
is a good marker for what's to come.
right.
You know, they produce some excellent research papers, of which this is one, just a recent example.
Right. So moving on to the next one, it is from Retraction Watch. It is a article titled "Bribery Offers from China Rattle Journal Editors. Are they being scammed?" So we have seen, we've all had princes from Nigeria asking us if they want our bank account numbers, to deposit millions and millions of dollars. But in this particular case, the author, says that there is an alarming trend for bribery offers received by journal editors. So the author says, the associate editors at a journal got an email offering about 1,500 US dollars. That's approximately one article processing fee for paper publication, and it's from an author from a Chinese institution. So Science and Retraction Watch, Science the organized, the journal, I suppose, and Retraction Watch found ongoing bribery in academic publishing, and Frontiers is also investigating and advising editors to ignore such offers. And this highlights the issues with academic fraud and phishing scams. And so we just talked about a regular phishing scam. I just got an email again, Tony. I'm supposed to, get a lot of millions of dollars in my account if I just simply give them my account details. So my question to you: what technological solutions can you think that can be implemented to prevent or at least decrease these?
Well, these papers are often being produced by paper mills, for example. So, and we're already working with tools like
Mm.
Clear Skies, for example, which has a paper mill alerting service. I think publishers should be, if they're not already, should be engaging with some of these tools in order to ensure that first of all, that they're blocking requests like this, but B, when they slip through, they have means of still be able to identify what are potentially black papers or illegitimate papers later on down the line.
Right. One thing that I think will catch on quickly is the secure sign-ons and two-step, multi-step authentication and those
Yeah,
things. I mean, the
yeah,
big AI companies are already giving us pass keys as a device, which is easier for us to sort of log in. So maybe we need such sort of innovation, even for researchers submitting manuscripts or even communicating with the staff at a journal. And
yeah,
sticking to the theme of China, this is an article was published in Springer Nature. China open access on the rise. What are the drivers behind authors' open access choice? So this is from Springer Nature, as I mentioned. So China leads in global research article production. We've talked about it, Tony. Chinese researchers' open access attitudes influence worldwide trends, and continuous, as in regular surveys reveal evolving open access perceptions in China. So
yeah,
a couple of numbers. In 2023, China published a quarter, 25% approximately, of the global fully open access articles, FOA articles. And between 2020 and 2023, the China FOA article growth rate was 17%. So, any thoughts on these numbers? I mean, China has shown a trend of leading things, including open
Yeah.
access. Yeah. Any
Well,
thoughts? Mm,
again, I think this is just another indication that China puts its money where its mouth is.
mm,
It appreciates that the sector, the industry is changing, and it's supporting it in the way it should.
mm.
There are more transformative deals being done in China than there were. There's a much more acceptance of open access as a reputable model. So it doesn't surprise me to see these sorts of numbers at all.
Right. So there are some interesting graphs in this, but some of the key points that I gleaned from this are that Chinese authors increasingly experience OA publishing models, and positive beliefs drive OA choices and wider readership. I suppose more citations. Everybody wants more citations, quicker publishing. Okay, so there are positives and negatives to quicker publishing, and the experience with open access boosts the belief in its future and reduces quality concerns. In the sense that the problem with open access, as in the widely reported problem, is that it seems to, let's say, not have as high rigorous open access. Sorry, what is it? Peer review, in the sense that if you take an average, there are more concerns with, let's say, faulty peer reviews in open access journals. So this is the
which
thing.
which in a sense is wrong, and it shouldn't be the case at all. The whole point about open access is that the only thing that's different, the
Right.
only thing that should be different with open access and the content that's behind paywalls,
Hmm.
is the method of which the content is made available.
Right.
You know, everything else, every other step in that process should be exactly the same.
Right.
And if it's not, then it's not just the fault of the business model; it's the fault of
Yeah.
the way that content is being managed.
Yes, yes, that's true. I mean, the problem with, let's say, predatory journals is that they feign as like journals when
Yeah,
offer open access, quick publishing. Like I can publish your paper in 72 hours instead of how many ever months that it takes for an average peer review. All right.
yeah,
So Tony, moving on to the next China-related story. So this is a quick thing. U.S. and China sign a new science pact, but with severe restrictions. So this is a news article published in Nature
yeah,
on 13th of
yeah,
December. So the agreement is a renewal, and the it is narrower than the previous versions. It focuses on basic sciences, excluding critical technologies. So, do you think this is a sign of concern in terms of? I mean, we know that China and US are leading, and maybe China is overtaking in terms of at least output to a certain extent. Is it concerning that partnerships are sort of waning?
Oh, I think it's concerning that the relationships are changing or have changed. That there isn't a level of trust, perhaps, in some of these more sensitive areas that there may have been, say, 5 or 10 years ago. Um, but the positive about this is that there is at least good communication
Mm-hmm.
between scientists at for a basic research level. Because I think anything that encourages this kind of global collaboration,
Mm-hmm.
um, you know, works towards global peace
That's
or
true.
contribute to global peace.
Yeah, it does. But at the same time, we've seen an increasing trend of cutting R&D budgets, right, across the world, I would say. And I'm wondering if this is sort of going to play into it, because the world is expanding. It'll always keep on expanding in terms of connectivity and collaboration, especially across the international boundaries. But this sort of a thing I would have expected. But then governments change and policies change, so we will have to see how things play out, I suppose.
Yeah, but let's at least applaud the fact that they've reached an agreement in some level, which is, I think, of merit in itself.
Right. Okay, now this is of particular interest to me, not because of Grandpa Simpson being in the background, but the article is titled "An Oath of Research Integrity." It is published in ajbostonpuppub.org. It's a short article by Arthur Boston, and this discusses the idea of an oath for research integrity. And researchers sometimes compromise on integrity by data fabrication, such as salami slicing. Current prevention efforts target institutions, publishers, and funders. So, the author, Boston, suggests focusing on individual researchers' self accountability by equating, I mean, having a researcher oath, like how lawyers and doctors, I took an oath before I got into like a live doctor or a qualified doctor. I mean,
Yeah,
even when I started my medical studies. So that's sort of an oath, and we have actually a translation of the oath itself. So maybe I can read it. So this is, I think, in French translated to English. So it would read something like this: In the presence of my peers, with the completion of my doctorate in a research field, in my quest for knowledge, I have carried out demanding research, demonstrated intellectual rigor, ethical reflection, and respect for the principles of research integrity. As I pursue my professional career, whatever my chosen field, I pledge to the greatest of my ability to continue to maintain integrity in my relationship to knowledge, in my methods, and my results. Sounds like a good start, right?
It does, and I must admit I was unaware that France was requiring all of its
Mm.
PhD recipients to do this.
Yes.
I think it is a positive step. If it only then makes that researcher, that 1%, on that 0.1% of researchers who potentially could become a bad actor, to
Mhm.
think twice about their actions and the impact it would have on their reputation, their career, and on the research itself.
Right. So my belief is that we need systemic changes like this. A Hippocratic oath is just something that you say before you go into medical practice, but it still helps.
But it's not just something you say. It's a global oath. It's something which has meaning for every person that's qualifying to be and to work as a doctor.
No, what I meant is that it is just like this. It is something that you are expected to say, but just by saying that, you sort of start inhabiting that thing itself,
Yeah,
like being more ethically rigorous. And this is what I think it's a good idea. I
and
would,
and it's also reflected. It shows that you're part of a broader community. You're not,
right.
you're just a custodian.
Mm-hmm.
You're today's doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and this has been an oath that's been shared by doctors for hundreds of years, thousands of years.
Right.
And the same thing could be applied in research. And it's not going to make those 95%, 99% of good researchers act any differently.
Mm-hmm.
They'll act with integrity, they'll act with ethical reflection, you know, they'll demonstrate intellectual rigor. But for those who don't, or
Mm-hmm.
those who are thinking about acting in a different way, maybe this will make them think twice.
Excellent. I never thought of it. That's a good point. Thanks, Tony, for bringing that up. And so we have a couple of big. I mean, this is non-quick hits. So the first one is I think everybody knows about this, but it took a lot of time for some article to get retracted. So it is a news article from Nature titled "Controversial COVID Study That Promoted Unproven Treatment Retracted After 4 Years Saga." So, Tony, 4 years. Are you cool with it taking this long?
Well, I don't think 4 years is particularly long in this industry. How long does it take to identify whether a paper
Well,
should be retracted or not? I think the fact it's retracted is a good thing.
right.
If it's identified certain practices which are contrary to good practice,
Mhm.
but 4 years does seem an awful long time.
Right. So this study promoted hydroxychloroquine as a COVID-19 treatment, led by a French researcher Didier Raoult. It was highly cited. Concerns arose over data quality and ethical approvals, and French investigations found ethical violations by the researcher. The study's retraction is significant due to its high citation count. I do not know the exact number, but it's you can imagine. I mean, COVID
Oh,
was a
sure.
yeah
You can just imagine, can't you?
yeah. So, I mean, I think we from the point of view of academia and publishing, as in we belong to that community. We should aim to decrease the time sort of turnaround times for all of these things by maybe bringing in automation where we can with human oversight so that things can be faster, but the research can be more robust.
You
I
know, and we've talked about this before. We've talked about that kind of knock-on effect.
mm,
This is a relatively highly cited paper. Other papers have then
mm,
cited this research and then have applied this research to justify its own findings.
right.
What happens to those papers?
Excellent point. So we need such things to happen faster, and I think the last main story, which is when I read this, I was feeling sad. It is again a news feature last month in Nature. It's titled "Science Could Solve Some of the World's Biggest Problems. Why aren't governments using it?" So it is an article written in Nature. It discusses why governments are not using science. A global survey, that is what this article is based on, shows that most specialists are dissatisfied with how science advice is given to policymakers. 80% of specialists say that their country's science advice system is poor or patchy, and the pandemic highlighted the weaknesses, as we all evidence. And some countries, the positive news, silver linings, some countries are experimenting with new models for science advice, and experts believe that science advice systems need significant change to address complex issues. So before I ask you a question, I want to show you a couple of graph charts which are not available. I mean, I when it was openly available, I took copies of it. So poor opinions of science advice. This is survey results. So you can see that the let's just say we are looking at the orange and the red color. So these are higher in other countries, which is like non-high income countries, which is not like surprising, but at the same time concerning, right, Tony?
Yeah, I think the overall concern is that it's more than 80%
Mm-hmm.
of scientists believe that it's either it's patchy at best,
Mm-hmm.
which is not good enough. And I think, unfortunately, kind of reflects the kind of the way governments, administrations view the importance of science and science advice.
Right. So
It's a shame.
yeah, so these are the different questions. I think researchers lack incentives to engage in policy making. So that is this the sorry, this is this graph bar reflects that. So this is a very useful thing. I find it. I mean, I want things to change. I want governments to be more science oriented. Although that's not what is happening around the world, right? I mean, yeah. So evidence based decision making is slowly disappearing. I'm hoping that, Tony, it's cyclical and
Do
that
you think it's seen as a luxury?
could you repeat yourself, please?
Do you think science advice is seen in some countries as a luxury? I mean, there are so many other priorities, so many other national priorities that national governments have to deal with.
In,
Is this seen as, yeah, this is useful to have, it's important, but hey, let's deal with education issues first. Let's
well,
deal with social issues first before we look at how science can start to address this.
well, would you consider education as a luxury? I mean,
No, I absolutely not.
yeah,
But that's what I was saying. Are they putting
yeah,
what are they putting in front of science in terms of guiding policy, guiding direction?
right. So I don't know. I mean, I did
I
not
don't
even
know.
think think about this. I don't want to. I guess the reason why I like science fiction so much is that at least there are sort of fictitious narratives on how things have gone wrong, so that we can learn from it, even though it may not have happened. And from that point of view, this is the scenario where the world is slowly going to anti sort of science propaganda, and we
Oh,
eventually,
but don't you think it's slightly cyclical? I mean, look how important, look how much higher
yeah,
uh, science was during the COVID
yeah,
crisis, during the pandemic. It was pushed up because there was a global requirement, there was a global emergency,
right.
and governments had to deal with it.
Right. I want to believe in it. I think 20 years is what I give. Everything will change itself around one cycle, 20 years, every 20 years. So let's
Let's
hope.
let's talk again in 2040,
Yeah, we are
2045.
anyway continuing this podcast forever. So now let's. This is a quick hit because I did not know what else to call it. But this is the story or the game that we titled the episode after. So this is another news article. It was published earlier in the year, but I did not know about it. So Publish or Perish is now a card game, not just an academic's life. So I'll quickly open this. This is the actual, I think, quick, Kickstarter project, and maybe we can talk about. I mean, look at this while we talk about this. So this is a card game
You should
based
buy
on
it.
what?
You should buy it.
I swear. I
Play
mean,
the game.
I don't know how 29. Yeah, it's not that expensive, I suppose.
It's not.
Yeah. So a new card game based on academic life and research misconduct has been developed. It's called Publish or Perish. Max Kozlov writes about how it mirrors an academic's life. So players aim to collect citations. So this was the one that caught my attention. You are expected to collect citations through strategies such as data fabrication and plagiarism. So the game pokes fun at academia's competitive nature. It's about finding successful in a cutthroat environment. So, Tony, satire is cool. I love satire. But are you cool with satire in the form of a game?
Oh, and listen, when I first saw this, when I first I heard about this last year.
Mm,
My first thoughts were, is this making light of the sector that we're in? But the more I think about it, resources like this can help to train early career researchers in terms of understanding, the impact of the different elements of the industry that they're entering. So actually, in a way, yes, it might poke fun at certain things, but also can highlight, what they need to be thinking about when it comes to managing their career.
well, let's hope that. I mean, I love satire in general, and I hope that this is
Oh,
taken the
me
right
too. Absolutely.
right spirit. And we need some lightness, but also we need to fix research integrity. And maybe this will bring more attention to what needs to be fixed rather than dwelling on the
Yeah.
negatives. And finally, this is a controversial thing. I think I briefly talked to you about this back when we were, I think, a month ago. But this is an article published in my favorite URL in this entire episode. It is openresearch.wtf. So, and its title, Have We All Forgotten About Sci-Hub? So, this article is written, and it discusses a preprint by Alexandra Elbakian, the
Yeah,
founder of Sci-Hub.
found that's iHub. Yeah,
So, a quick pause. So, Tony, if somebody were not aware of what Sci-Hub is, how would you explain what Sci-Hub is?
very simple. It's an illegal service making paywall content available to global research community.
Yeah,
And I don't think we should be giving this any promotional space, because this is effectively undermining.
right, right,
This undermines the integrity of and the work that global publishers are doing
right,
in terms of investing in making good content available for researchers.
right.
You know, let me say what I think is great is that it demonstrates there is a route to market, but they've got, in my mind, they've gone about this in the wrong way.
Right. So I would have said Napster for MP3s or torrents for whatever. That Sci-Hub is that same thing for
Yeah,
research
you know, and
papers.
maybe in 20 years' time, you're absolutely right. Maybe in 20 years' time, this will be the default. But
Mm.
at the moment, this is unlicensed, this is unregistered, this is unregulated,
Right.
uh, and I feel nervous about it.
Yeah, we are not promoting it. What we are, the main point that I wanted to discuss, Tony, is that Elbakian proposes using more open access colors to replace illegal OA, which is currently colored black. So he wants other colors such as blue for academic networks and red for tools like Sci-Hub instead of black. So Sci-Hub obviously has a massive usage. I mean, Tony, until January 1st, 2025, most of researchers in India would have had to opt for Sci-Hub if they did not have access. We are again not promoting it; it's a reality. So maybe things like the ONOS would solve some of these. My question to you, the only question that I wanted to ask you, that's why it's a quick hit. What are your thoughts on the extra colors, red, green, and blue, and everything?
Um, if it makes it easy to identify bad content, anything that makes it easy to identify bad
Mm-hmm.
um, or content that hasn't gone through the same kind of academic rigor as other types of papers, then it's a good thing.
Right. And Tony, I realized that I've forgotten to ask you a
So
question.
you touched a nerve there with.
No, no, no. I wanted to ask you this title. This we talked about it already. This that's all I wanted to. I'll switch to our big video. So, you are familiar with similarity, or we know about an album like the Megadeth's album. So, are you a big fan of Megadeth? We are referring to Peace Sells, but who's buying it, right? 1985 album.
I like some of their songs, but I think Dave Mustaine's a good guitarist, but
Y-
I'm not a big fan.
Excellent riffing, right? I
Oh
love the riffs. Some of the riffs that he's
yeah, some
written.
of the riffs are great.
Would you have? Would you like what parallel universe where Dave stuck with Metallica?
Um, uh, yeah, well, he co-wrote some of the songs on Kill 'Em All on the
Yeah.
first album, and some really great songs which Metallica still play now. I don't know whether the relationship would have lasted. So I think Kirk Hammett replaced Dave Mustaine, and Kirk's a fantastic guitarist.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. I mean, a Black Album. I mean, there's a polar divide,
Oh,
right? What?
legend.
Yeah. So that brings us to the end of the episode. So Tony, if somebody were to listen to us talk about guitaring and Kirk Hammett and Metallica and Megadeth for the first time, where can they find more of such content?
Well, maybe they should be finding us on various heavy metal websites around the world. But they can find us on LinkedIn if you search PubShorts, or on YouTube. Look for Inago PubShorts. You'll see the 23, 24 recordings that we've done up till now. Or you can contact KK or me via LinkedIn again, or directly contact me at tonyo.inago.com.
Right. And if you are watching this on Play on Demand or live streaming on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell notification icon. And if you like the content, including the game that we talked about, Publish or Perish, if you liked the content and our sort of banter on the game itself, please share it with your friends or colleagues. If this is illuminating, if it's educational, if you learned something from it, that's our aim. That's why we are here. So, Tony, any plans for the week coming up? Any
Uh, and
interesting?
nothing that will inform or amuse the global audience. Not
All
yet. Ask me next time.
All right. So until the next time, which we don't know exactly when, until the next time, this is Dr. KK signing off for the entire team that helps us bring such content to you. We will see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.